Okay, let's make two very simple games. The first is just going to detect mouse clicks and count them, which sounds dumb, but for some reason everybody really loves it. And then we're going to make one which has a bouncing ball and you have to click inside the ball, and when you do something will happen. So let's set up. First we'll have a variable for our score, which I will call num clicks, that starts out at 0. I want to display the number of clicks, so I'll need a font. So we'll call this text size 64. I'm going to keep left alignment, and now I'm going to draw text, and I'm going to say clicks, and then num clicks, and I'm going to display that at maybe 1010. Well, let's just look at it and see how it looks. First I'll fill it as black. Okay, that's way too high, so let's move it down a bit. Let's move it down to 70. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so what I want to do is, whenever I click it, I want that to go up. So here's how you know how to detect mouse clicks so far. You'd say if mouse pressed, and then you would say num clicks plus plus. Here's the problem with that. Yes, so I'm trying to click once, but really it's going up by quite a lot. And the reason that's happening is because the draw loop here is running so quickly that even though I think I'm just holding the mouse down for a minute, the draw loop actually goes 3 or 4 times during the time when my mouse is pressed down. So it's not detecting single clicks the way that I want it to. So now I'm going to show you an alternative approach that will let you detect single clicks. So outside of draw, we're going to create a method that's a special built-in method, and we're going to call it mouse released. So this method will automatically run exactly once whenever your mouse was pressed down and you let it go. So whenever you release the mouse. So here is where I'm going to say num clicks plus plus. And now when I run it, you see it's detecting discrete clicks. And you can go ahead and try and spam away on that as much as you want. Just to make it a little bit more exciting, let's use the background command. So I'm going to do background, and then I'm going to mix a new color that is all red and nothing else. And remember, this runs exactly once whenever you release the mouse. So if I paint the whole screen red, it's only going to be that way for just a split second, because draw is running all the time, separate from this method. So I will paint the background red, but then just immediately it's going to go back to the way it used to be. But it's nice because now it's kind of freaking me out a little bit every time I click. Okay, as fun as that was, I'm going to delete that. I guess I'll keep clicks. Yeah, I'll keep everything else. Let's just really quickly recreate all that code that has a bouncing ball. So I know I'll need an X and a Y coordinate. I know that I'll start the ball in the middle. And you know what, I'll go ahead and give the ball a size also. So size will be 100. And now I'm going to draw an ellipse located at that XY coordinate whose size is size. And what do I need to do? If I want it to move, I'll need to say like x equals x plus x speed and y equals y plus y speed. So that means I'll need an x speed and a y speed. So I'll add those to the list up here. And I'll make my x speed equal to 3, and I'll make my y speed equal to -1. Okay, now I want to have it bounce off the walls. So I'll say if x is less than 0, I'm going to reverse the x speed. And I'll also say if x is greater than 600, then I'll reverse the x speed. And I'll add those same 2 statements for y. So if y is either of those things, then I will reverse the y speed as well. Okay, let's take a look. Cool, it's bouncing. Right now I'm not that concerned that it's bouncing off the middle of the circle. We can come back and fix that later if we want. Nothing's happening when I'm clicking. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I'm going to show you how to detect whether the mouse is inside the circle or not, because that's what we're going to have to be able to do if we want to be able to click inside the circle only. This will require a very little bit of math. So here's the concept. We've got the ellipse, and I know the variables for the center of the ellipse are x and y. And I know that the radius of my ellipse is size divided by 2, at least for my current variables, because I named the diameter size. Okay, so where's my mouse? My mouse is at the coordinates mouse x, mouse y. Okay, so how am I going to know if the mouse is inside the circle? What I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate what is this distance from my mouse's xy to the center of the circle. So I'm going to calculate this distance. And then all I have to do is I have to say, is that distance to the center of the circle larger than the radius of the circle? Because if the distance is larger than my circle radius, I must be outside the circle. But if it's smaller than the circle radius, then I must be inside. So how do we calculate this distance? Well, like surprisingly many things in mathematics, it's actually just the Pythagorean theorem. So this is the difference between my mouse's x and the ellipse x. So this is the difference in x's. And this is the difference in y's between my mouse y and the ellipse y. So I'm going to find the dx, I'm going to find the dy, and then this distance is given, like I said, by the Pythagorean theorem. So the distance squared equals dx squared plus dy squared. So if I want to find just the distance by itself, it's going to be the square root of those two things. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's do it the ugly way first, and then we'll do it properly. So let's see, what did I want? So I said I wanted to find what is, I'm going to make it a double. What is dx? What's the difference between my x for the mouse and my x for the ellipse? So my mouse x is mouse x, my ellipse's x is x. And then dy is the same thing. It's the difference between my mouse's y and the ellipse's y. Okay, so now the distance, the straight line distance from my mouse to the center of the ellipse is going to be math.square root of dx squared plus dy squared. So that's it. That calculates the distance. Here's the problem. It's a little bit, you might be wondering, like, where do we put this code? It's a little bit arbitrary and definitely ugly to just drop all these calculations right here in the middle of draw. Instead, what would be nice is if, I just cut all that code, by the way. Instead, what would be nice is if I could do this. If I could say, get distance, and I just give it my first set of coordinates, mouse x, mouse y, and then my second set of coordinates, x, y. So if this was actually a command. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to make it a command. So here underneath draw, let's go ahead and make a new method. It'll be public. It's going to return a double. We'll call it getDistance. And now let's have an x1 and a y1 and an x2 and a y2. So it's going to take 4 inputs. Okay, so I just repasted my code. Now I want to find the distance between whatever coordinates these input numbers are. So for this program, I'm going to happen to give it my mouse x, mouse y, but I don't want to use mouse x and mouse y in here. Instead, I want to use whatever these variables are, because these variables are what are holding the inputs from whoever's trying to use this method. So the difference in x's is the difference between x1 and x2. The difference in y's is the difference between y1 and y2. Cool. Oh, and now I need to return the answer at the end. So instead of saving this into a variable called distance, I'll just return it. Great, so now this code works the way I want it. Whenever I need to find the distance between 2 points, I can just run my getDistance method. Okay, let's go ahead and color the ellipse different colors depending on whether or not the mouse is inside it. So I'm going to create 2 new colors up here, which I'll call red and green. And I'll actually assign these integers values inside setup. So red is going to be the color that I get from all red and no green and no blue. And green is going to be the color that's no red and all green and no blue. Okay, so now I've got red and green that I can use as my colors. So here's where I draw my ellipse. So if, for example, I said fill red right before I draw my ellipse, now I've got this snazzy red ellipse. So what I want to have happen is I want the ellipse to color green if my mouse is inside it. So let's add an if statement. I'll say if, now I need to think, well here let's write this as a comment first. I'll say like if my mouse is inside the ellipse, then what I want to do is I want to fill with the green color instead. And after that I can draw the ellipse. So how am I going to say this? Well, I can use my getDistance command. So right here I could say get the distance between the mouse and the ellipse, and I'll save that as distance. And then I can say if the distance is smaller than the size divided by 2, because that's the size of my ellipse. And that would work. In fact, we don't even really need to save getDistance into this variable. I could just take this method and run it right inside the if statement. So I could say if get the distance between these 2 points, and then this is going to return that distance. So if that distance is less than size over 2. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So I'm filling with red no matter what, but I haven't drawn anything yet. And then I test the distance, and if my distance is inside the circle, then I'll fill with green, and then I'll draw my ellipse. So here we go. Oh, very nice. So let's complete the game. Let's go and add that method that we started off the video with, public void mouse released, because we know this runs whenever I click the mouse. And what I want to say in here is something like this. I want to say if the mouse is inside the circle, and remember this code is running right when I click the mouse, so I don't need to ask like did I click the mouse, because that's already happening if this code is running. So the mouse has been clicked, I'm asking is it inside the circle? If it is, then that's when I want to do stuff like add 1 to the score, and maybe I want to do other things like reset the circle. So I could move it to a random location. I could make it a little bit smaller. Maybe I could make it a little bit faster moving to make it harder. Okay, so let's give this a try. I guess I can do the same code that I did above for testing if the mouse is inside a circle. That was this code. Except now I don't want to fill with green. Now I want to add 1 to the score. Do we have a score? Oh, it's num clicks. Okay. So I'll say num clicks plus plus. And let's not do any of the rest of this for the moment. Let's just see if this is going to work. So here I'm clicking outside the circle. And now I'm clicking inside the circle. And it's nicely working. Okay, so in order to make the game a little bit more fun, let's reset the circle. In fact, I'm going to make a method for that. Reset circle. I'll create the method. So to reset the circle, I want to set random x and y. So I'll say x equals math.random times width, and then y equals math times height. Let's look at that much. So again, let's sort of review in English. Mouse released runs with the mouse clicks. I check if the distance between the mouse and the inside of the circle, the center of the circle is less than the radius. If it is, then I add 1 to the number of clicks, and I run this method, which will jump here and reset a random x position and y position. There we go. So yes, this really jumps it around. So this makes the game a little bit more fun. But I'm noticing, even though it jumps it to a new location, the speed is the same and the direction it's moving is the same. So I'll leave it to you to go ahead and reset other things inside reset circle. So here you should set random x speed and y speed. and maybe try and make them a little bit faster than before. Before I end, let me point out one more opportunity to make the code a little bit nicer. I'm doing this if statement twice. I'm saying if get distance blah blah blah, and then over here the exact same thing. If get distance blah blah blah. This is a little bit hard to read. If you came back to this code in a week, you would have to remind yourself, wait, what is this doing? Oh yeah, it's the blah blah blah. It would be nicer if you could just do something like this. If you could say if point, let's do this, mouse is in circle. So what if this was just a method that returns true or false, is my mouse inside the circle? Well, that's what's nice about programming. If you wish a certain command existed, you can just go ahead and make it yourself. So I'm going to create that method, and that's exactly what this if statement does. It tests to see is the mouse inside the circle. So if I get the distance and it's less than the radius, then I know the mouse is inside the circle, and so I can return true, otherwise I can return false. So now I've made this nice command, and I never have to think about it again. Instead, I can always just ask, is the mouse inside the circle, by using the command itself. Like that, for example. And that's nice because it makes the whole thing read a lot better. Okay, enjoy the problems. Come back next time, and maybe we'll look at images.